Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Who Knows Podcast, Episode 2. Special Gareth, special guest Gareth Bonn here.
I'm
We're
especially Gareth.
we're gonna be yes, sped, where we're gonna
Fed.
be hanging out and just speculating, talking about some fun stuff. So, if you're with the journey, you've already been a fan. We've had a great reception to this series. Sadly, Cracker couldn't make it today, so we're going off the hip. We're just going off, and yeah. So, Who Knows Episode 3, starting off. You've been getting down onto my robot. What's up? What's up with these AI, bro? What's up with these robots?
So basically, these robots have like very human-like minds that no one really understands. They've just really but they created the mind, the ability to create a robotic mind, and then they embedded three robotic laws
Mm-hmm.
in that mind. So it's that cannot hurt. You cannot hurt humans either through action or inaction. You have to obey any orders given to you by a human, and then you have to preserve yourself. Lastly.
Mm.
And so it just kind of explores the idea of these kind of like egotistical robots, and often in many cases, kind of like coming to life and then existing within these laws, and then pretty brilliant but flawed humans like trying to interact with them and make them do what they want them to do. Um, and the problems which that comes across. So a lot of the time, it's like some sort of strange cross between the laws of robotics that's causing some sort of error within the robot,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also the idea that you're playing with a greater power, something that's like smarter and stronger than you are. So what are you going to do? And it's also alive in many senses.
And so, does this raise up any like metaphysical or religious questions because of like
A little here at the end.
creating intelligence, right?
Well, not so much about that. I
Mm.
think in the end it kind of brought this up. In order to have a warp drive, I don't know. There's the spoiler alert, I guess, but in order to have a warp drive, basically they asked a brain computer in order to build a spaceship that had a warp drive in it to
Mm.
travel many parsecs at a time. And the computer was like, it broke with the first computer that they asked, and then another company asked this company to create it, and they tried to, assuming that it was going to fail. And they would just get paid for the attempt, and then it created the machine. But the problem is with warp drive, the human has to die and then be brought back to life because you have
Mm-hmm.
to travel faster than light, so everything has to break down in energy. Um, and so it does this whole thing where it's like segments the first portion, the first law of robotics in its mind, because it's clearly harming human by killing them, but it's not necessarily harming them in the long run if they get brought back to life. And so it's like kind of this idea between them accidentally breaking the brain over this and the warp drive being perfected. These guys die, and then they see hell, and then they come back to life, and they're just like, "Well, I guess it worked."
Whoa.
That's pretty much
That's
it.
interesting too because in Warhammer, what they have to do for space travel is they have to go through the warp, which is basically the non-material chaos that exists post reality because they believe in the God Emperor and he does like he's immortal and like kind of protects them, quote unquote. But in the Warhammer universe, everything is chaos, everything goes to the immaterium. And in order for them to travel through space time or FTL, faster than light, to go through these wormholes or to fold it, they have to go through chaos. So basically, they have to go through hell for a little bit, and some people come out on the other side and they're like, ah, ah. And they're like, oh, what? We're across the galaxy. They're like, no, no, and they become
Yeah, pretty
corrupted.
much.
That's
It's
pretty
pretty much
insane.
like those
And
source events.
Asimov's way before that.
Yeah, I'm sure that Asimov like embedded those seeds. Like that book experimented with a lot of different ways. Warp travel affecting your mind in some way.
Yeah.
You're being like kind of ethereally attached and like seeing the greater picture, either in like a hellish sequence or often the first way I ever saw it was in a like benevolent sequence, like in Rick
Mm.
and Morty, where they go through warp travel and they're like unified. Their hearts and minds are like unified. They're like we see peered into the abyss of eternity together.
And who was that?
That
Like
was Rick
in
and
the
Morty.
show? Oh,
I
that
don't
was
know.
the guys, the
Yeah.
main guys. Okay. Yeah, because like in something like Star Trek, it's like very peaceful and very like nonchalant. Like they're just traveling through across the galaxy. It's all mapped out into quadrants. I mean, with Deep Space Nine, there's a wormhole that opens up near Gamma Quadrant. Um, and there's an outpost there because they're like, what's going to come through? But usually it's just things from the other side of the already mapped galaxy. So far nothing's come like unknown or in the show. I don't want to spoil things. That's my favorite Star Trek series though.
That's pretty cool.
Star Wars also does it a little bit differently. So I guess that's just interesting. What do you think of space travel in general? Like how it's been depicted in fiction, all the way from like uh, Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, which is like John Carter of Mars, all the way to um,
Well, I think the other
Jules
thing
Verne
about like
stuff.
thing about space travel is to make it happen in fiction, you usually need some sort of warp drive or hyperspace drive. And so they do it in two different ways. You could either travel through hyperspace, which is like parallel dimension,
Hmm.
in order to travel extremely long distances, or you could just warp there instantly through some method or another. Those are pretty much the two like standard methods of travel, interstellar travel. You know what I mean? And the other way,
What
I
about
guess,
an
is like,
Einstein-Rosen bridge
what's that?
or the Rainbow Bridge? It's uh, it's like how Thor gets around. Feels like,
It
and
seems
then
like a method of a version of hyperspace.
okay, so is the idea through hyperspace that there's no outside forces like gravity and time and whatever, so that you can just traverse through it unaltered,
Yeah, and it
or
happens faster or something. It's hyper. I don't know.
okay, it's hyper.
It's hyper. It's space and hyper.
What if I travel through subatomic space?
Well, hyperspace is
Get
clearly
there
a
in 5 years,
dangerous place
you're
to
like,
be.
fuck, I wasted a bunch of time.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, well, no, because Star Wars in episode 8, which a lot of fans hate and they don't even like recognize this as necessarily canon because it's Ryan Johnson who's a new time director, and but basically they said this maneuver can only be happen one time, but we're going to go faster than light through our opponent's ship and it's going to destroy both ships. So it doesn't like
yeah.
travel outside. It's like, no, I'm about to like break through the light barrier, but it's gonna rip through a fabric of space time.
No one's done that, so
No
no
one
one
in
can.
Star Wars before or since either.
I'm
They
just
just
saying
made
that
that
the
bullshit
entire.
up.
Yeah, what happens then is like
It's terrible.
crazy sci-fi. I like it
I
though.
I like
Do you like portals?
portals are okay. Portals are okay, and again, that's kind of John Carter, right? He like just like slips through
I
and
feel like
then
there's a lot, and so
landscape.
especially in video games or like Battlestar Galactica, they all have like kind
Oh
of
yeah.
like
Or
a
what about
enter digits, and they just like jump. It's like some sort of warp jump.
Stargate?
Yeah, same as Stargate. Well, that's not this
They
kind of the
walk
same thing because they don't
through.
have like a warp drive in Stargate, but there's definitely a portals in it.
Yeah, there's like a thing, and it's like, all right, on this side, I'm on this side of the universe, and then I'm gonna traverse this, but I'm gonna show up way on the other side.
Yeah, wormhole style. Wormholes. Yeah,
Yeah.
entirely figure it out.
Do you think wormholes are closer to black holes or?
Mathematically and probability, that's where the wormhole theory comes from, is what's on the other side of a black hole.
Oh, and there's more evidence for the black hole
Well, we know black holes exist.
through
Wormholes have never
proxy,
been.
though, right? Not through direct
Mm,
observation.
no, through direct observation, but it's the way it is explained through proxy is because a black hole sucks everything into it, including light. You just see a void in space
Yeah.
and a shift. So basically, you can see what's behind the black hole also, and so you see like this rim where everything is distorted,
Yeah.
and it's exactly what you would expect from like gravitational distortion of light. And it basically looks like a lens, like how light would like get stretched through a lens if you put it, because light gets bent.
Yeah.
And you can see what's behind it because what light that's traveling kind of if you have a black hole here and light traveling this way towards the black hole gets absorbed into it, but it is also getting traveling this way. And some of that light goes up, gets trapped in the gravitational field of the black hole, but doesn't get sucked in all the way and just gets bent this way and
Hmm.
goes around behind it. And so you see these like regions in space where that happens, and
Okay.
that's what a black hole is.
Okay. And what is the event horizon?
The event horizon is where nothing can escape it. So it's basically that place in space around a black hole where nothing can escape the gravitational field of the black hole. So, like I said, like some light just goes up and get bent back down and travels this way. A lot of light doesn't do that. A lot of light goes up, gets struck beyond the event horizon, and just gets sucked directly into the black hole.
Hmm.
And so,
And we don't know where it goes
no, it's in there now.
in there. So Event Horizon is a pretty cool movie. It's kind of based on Warhammer,
Is it?
and it's also they like go through hell basically.
That's interesting.
There's a lot of demonic stuff. We're like, we don't know what it is. That's very interesting though. Some cool stuff. On the more like realistic front, I guess they say Andy Weir is like, um, really legitimate on his science and his astrophysics, but he wrote The Martian, and it's also a movie now with Matt Damon, but that's purely it uses pure like there is fiction to it, but it uses purely scientific terms without having to make huge jumps in logic.
All right.
One thing that they did, an MIT, they got an MIT student who Childish Gambino plays in the movie, so it's kind of cool. Um, they're gonna slingshot his craft based on the gravitational force of Mars. So like they're like instead of just launching off and trying to go off Mars, you're gonna have to like ride this, and then as soon as it starts to sling you, you go full propeller. So I don't know
Break the orbit,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, he did, and then he does some Iron Man stuff too. He creates a tear in his suit, and it like pushes out like oxygen, and he like pushes himself a little bit. So he's basically a biologist, I believe, and he has to like grow his own potatoes out of like his own feces and like a whole bunch of crazy stuff that is mathematically like holy shit. But his whole crew dies at the very beginning. Spoilers, but it's in the trailer too. He's like with a
No.
crew of like seven
Lost in
people,
space.
and they got a bunch of different like jobs, and he's a botanist, so he knows how to grow stuff, and he's gonna be the plant guy. And the mission overall is terraform Mars, but this is like the first crew, so they're not anything crazy. They just have a little base there, and they're gonna,
I see, I see.
and it's crazy.
Just contact. Does he have contact with Earth?
Yes, but not for a long time. And then they create a system where like he puts letters in because they have a rover,
All right.
Mars rover. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's good. It's a good book, but I like the movie.
That's cool. What's it called?
So The Martian by Andy Weir. But that was just bringing up a point of like how much. What do you think about like modern science fiction where we do have a lot of like scientifically minded people writing this stuff and using scientific terminology without making huge leaps in logic versus something like Star Wars or even Battlestar Galactica, where it's
I
kind of
like more
more,
modern stuff.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of more science fantasy and more about the story than the base of it.
Science fantasy is a really good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That's science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Star Wars is for sure science fantasy. I mean, I would put Doom in that too. Like, there's lords, ladies, dukes, fucking feudal systems and kingdoms, and I don't know. Gene Roddenberry though has a very different like Unitarian view, and that's how Star Trek is. There's not really like racism or like there are the nobody's like poor. They're all just trying to like explore and like spread knowledge and like conquer the galaxy, I guess, but in a way that's humanitarian and universal. That's why I think a lot of people appeal to Star Trek. They're like, why do we have to stay in these barbaric like space wars and king and queen and dark
Yeah, that
and
makes sense. The bridge to the normal people.
more like universal, yeah, like a universalist perspective too.
All right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's wars and there's AI and there's the Borg and there's treachery and there's famine and there's stuff that happens, but that's the framework of the Federation. So, I mean, Halo has some similar things. I'm sure Justin would have a lot more to say about Halo stuff.
It's true.
But
Think about aliens.
like necromorphs are just extraterrestrial beings or interdimensional beings.
Yes.
Intergalactic.
Who knows?
Planetary.
We haven't said it yet in the conversation.
Planetary intergalactic.
Podcast. So, who knows?
Oh yeah. Fuck.
Who knows podcast?
Episode 3, rolling, baby. Thanks for the support. Listen, here's the focus. I think aliens don't exist in the material extraterrestrial form, but I do believe in interdimensional entities that exchange knowledge and power and
Interesting.
energy into this realm.
I have to disagree. In the infinity that space exists in, even just observable space, there has to be some other life forms. Just by the
Why?
probability
Because
of it.
we're here.
Yeah,
It's
literally.
almost like a miracle.
It's not a miracle.
How is it not a miracle?
It's
Scientists
not
would
how
say
life
it's a
works.
miracle that we're
It's
here.
uncommon, but it's clearly possible.
Uncommon.
Yeah, for life to be seated.
It's one place in the universe from our observable, from our
Isn't very far
observability.
cosmologically. Can't observe very far.
Okay, but you're still adding a lot there.
I think so.
You don't think so?
No, I think that if life happened on Earth
If
in a
there's one fish
repeatable
in a pond,
environment,
you can't say if we go to a lake, then there will be more fish.
if you go
All
to
we have
enough lakes,
evidence is
there
that
will
there's
be more
one
fish.
fish. We can't say, well, every 200 square feet there's a
No, but the
fish.
fish had to happen, right? The fish had to get there somehow, which means life is spawnable within the universe.
What if only under certain preconditions, which is how scientists look at habitable planets. They have to look at the preconditions in which life occurred here and their assumptions or their observations of how that life happened here. And then they have to apply it to the rest of the universe, like distance from the star, hydrogen atmosphere, carbon based life forms, having water, like a lot of things that are required on this planet for our life forms to exist, but that is not necessarily the case across the universe.
You're arguing pretty hard against aliens here, but I still think they're real. Someplace across the galaxy.
You'd like to hope so, right?
And that's the vast consensus, at least.
That's not the vast consensus.
Yeah, it is most of the people I've talked to.
That's
Let's
such
ask
a
the comment section.
that's such a
Do
small
you
group.
think?
You haven't even met less than 1% of the population.
Okay.
So how
Well,
do you have that as a focus group? It's amazing. It's a mass consensus over people I've talked to.
it's just the vibe I've talked to. But when I go out and I talk to people about aliens, this is not the first question I've asked. Most people think that it's almost because of the vastness of infinity. At least the people that I've been around think that it's almost a certainty that other life does exist within the universe and that we're not only it. But if you want to argue passionately against that, then that's fine. But it's still what I think.
Well, you think that. I think that.
You
I
think
would say.
that it's all intelligent design. And
Well,
that's why that's the
that's putting words in
basis
my mouth,
of
but
your theory. Seems to be.
no, you're putting words in my mouth because I was going to talk about interdimensional entities, which are existent outside of this material realm. But I'd have to say on that, since we're budding, do aliens exist extraterrestrially outside in the vastness of the universe, outside of our observable base, or maybe within, but deeper than we're willing to look? I would say, who knows, right? Nobody knows. But I think there is more epistemological claims for interdimensional entities than extraterrestrial entities.
Interdimensional. What
So
would an
that can
interdimensional being
something that
do?
fades in and out of this plane.
Okay.
So like a ghost or a demon or a Sasquatch or whatever. These entities that we say they're there and then they're not, and I don't know. Which is what a lot of people who do say they believe in aliens are like, oh yeah, they come down and then they leave, and then what? Okay, how come there was no observational data? Is there? And they say, well, their technology is so advanced that we were unable to perceive it at with our current capabilities, which is possible. But I would say, and some ghost hunters say that too. It's like we're almost on the cusp of being able to prove ghosts are real, and some will say they can prove ghosts are real with technological evidence, given our technological advancements, like with our certain cameras and heat signatures and stuff like that, gamma filters. But I think that there's more evidence that there's things in a vast array of existence and our three-dimensional physical plane, well, four-dimensional because we also are cohabiting time and space. Every time you move, it takes time. Every time you're in a new place. Like the same man in the same river is never the same man or the same river. Um, so these moments, these fragments of three-dimensional objects within time and space I think have perceptual capabilities of interdimensional entities that can transfer energy and vibes through that. Mostly fear, but I also think that's a huge reason why angels in the Bible, the first thing they say is, be not afraid. Because these interdimensional entities are automatically like, whoa, how the fuck? Like,
Fair
my
enough.
brain is broken. So that's truly where I'm coming from. However, if there's some gray men on the dark side of the moon and they can fly their planes to Area 51 and back in an afternoon, maybe I'm wrong. That could be it. Or, like you said, the mathematical probability within the vastness of our universe, given the Goldilocks zone of our small sun and carbon-based life forms with hydrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere, possibly.
True.
Who knows?
Who knows? There we go. All right.
So fuck yeah, bro. Appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, yeah, leave down in the comments down below what the fuck do you think. And yeah, I had a great time as always. See you on the next one. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Peace.